So what I wanted to do first was kind of do a welfare check-in with everyone here. How are you, really? You know, and to obviously not make that question too self-indulgent, I want to ask, how do you feel about what you experienced in relation to Home Sweet Home and Apollo House? What do you think about where we stand with this issue today, and what do you reckon needs to be the response to the ongoing crisis of homelessness that this state and this society is experiencing? So maybe I'll start with you, Jim.
And we have a half an hour to fill all that.
Well, listen, we have, if you could give me like sort of one sentence for each of those questions, maybe. I want to go right across the panel.
Well, I wouldn't start with me. If you,
all right, well, we'll start.
I would start with Brendan. I mean, you know, you had various levels of commitment. Me and Glenn and the other artists, as Brendan would call it, we were kind of on the outside, you know, trying to help, do everything. We weren't getting our, you know, he was getting his ass kicked in the union and his job and whatever. And I think it was particularly heavy on him and Dean, and then it would have fed down to Muse and then to us.
Brendan, then, tell us.
Brendan, go ahead.
Yeah, the therapy's going well, Harry. Some people wouldn't agree with that. All right, Mandy. Look, it's a while now, and sometimes other people sum up your own thoughts best. And I think Dave Gibney, and Dave is here with us, by the way, summed up my reflections on it. We had a great opportunity. When I talk about we, I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the collective. What I, in my old-fashioned red kind of way, called the working class, had a great opportunity at that time, because there was massive public support. But we came apart. Part of that's down to ourselves. As somebody who's planned a number of, you know, industrial struggles in my career, I know the planning that goes into that. And we didn't put nearly as much planning into this. I certainly didn't. There was a lot of it was from the heart and from the gut. Nevertheless, we arrived at an incredible situation. And I'm struck by Dave's frustration, which I share, by the way, that it feels like an opportunity has slipped away from us. And the sentence that keeps coming back in my head, Harry, and I'll give it over to Nelly or Dean or whoever now, is, you know, when you think of Coveney slipping away, all what we said isn't in that, by the way, for very good reasons. Slipping away, touring the world with us, representing us. When you think about that, you know, all that keeps them in power is our division. When I say our division, I mean everybody that had the interest to be in this room, for example. You know, whether you're a trade unionist or whether you're not, or whether you're a volunteer or an artist or an activist or one of the amazing people who go out every night, just somebody that gives a shit, basically. All that keeps them in power is our division. And that was a coming together moment I think we let slip away. Nelly?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. It's like any movement or any group that you're in, when the cracks form and the personalities clash, then you can see it fall apart. But welfare-wise, yeah, it was exhausting afterwards. And I was more in the back room. I wasn't really in the house as much. I was more at these really long meetings in various locations. But it was very, it was tough. Yeah, it was very tough on your whole being, like, you know, because you knew it was going on. You knew you were in a country where the government were doing nothing about it, and it was only getting worse. So, yeah.
My welfare.
Well, and your politics too.
Not political. My welfare during Apollo House was one of extreme emotion. It was emotions that I probably never even knew I had inside me. It really helped me discover who I was. It took 2 years to find out who I am after it, but it did help me understand myself. I felt at the time I probably was just as vulnerable as somebody else that didn't have a home. But I did have a home. I had 2 kids at home. I had my home to go home to. So that's what really got me more so than anything else, knowing that I actually had somewhere safe to go. After the whole thing, I do feel about the division. I feel that that's down to our lack of structures there, and how we should have implemented them a little bit stronger. I think that we could have really helped push forward the movement. As for me, politics, I am a grassroots activist. I believe that everybody should be coming together. It doesn't matter what you believe in, but politics and policies can be left at the door if we're aiming for the same thing. I believe that all the activists and the volunteers that were in Apollo House, they pulled it together from the grassroots, self-organised. They put the structures in place for Apollo House. It wasn't any of us really, it was them. I just stood over them in the court. And I feel that most of the credit goes through to them. I feel that the campaigns to have continued on from Apollo House, I don't think it was all disaster. I think there has been campaigns. I just think an awful lot of us were tired, burned out. And other campaigns have picked up. Like we have the My Name Is with our City Helping Homeless. We have Through the Cracks documentary that's just after being released following the families. We have the vacant properties poster campaign happening all over the city. And tonight we have a direct action where there is an occupation happening right now. So we want to make sure that everyone still gets involved. Push the names down, volunteers, spread the word out, leave the division at the side, and it's time to start coming together and keep this as a priority. We need to keep homelessness and housing as a priority because it's getting worse. We have Brexit coming, we have an awful lot of vulture funds coming in, we've got an awful lot more people at risk of losing their homes. The mortgages with PST, B or whatever they're called, their homes are all at risk, and people need to realise that it's not a class division anymore, it's money division, and that's really, do you know what I mean? If you can't afford it, you may as well get out of the city.
Ding.
Cheers. Oh, should we play that one?
We're all alive.
They're all alive. It's great to be sitting beside Ashton. I haven't really spoke or sat beside Ashton for about a year now. Just was the mentalness of Apollo House. But it's a pleasure to sit beside it tonight. I think the problem and the solution is in this room, right? Just in this room. Like the people that I've invited here tonight, I know as a collective what the potential of that group is if we get our shit together, and the problem and the solution is in this room here. It's nowhere else. It doesn't lie with anybody else, and we need to own that. We need to go with that. The biggest fight, the biggest question, the only fucking question in this country is, what are we going to do about homelessness and housing? That's it. If you're in another fight, fair play to you, but stay out of my way, because my fight and the fight of this nation needs to be this, okay? We could be at war with Brexit, but I think that this is the fucking one that we need to go in, okay? We could have an amazing 32 county Ireland, but this is the one that I will die trying to achieve. My mental health is amazing. It fucking is, it's amazing. I will cry and laugh with the best of them. My mental health is amazing. Partly down to me coaches in the room here. I do jiu-jitsu at Owen Ruddy 3 days a week, and that has fucking saved my life. Because literally, I wanted to drive this life into a wall with my wife in the car. That's no messing, and it was just post-traumatic stress from a war that we were in. We were in a war with ourselves, with our egos, with our consciousness, with our country, with our government, with the idea of what's more important, people or property, power or people, profit or people. That's it. That's where we're at. And the solution is in this fucking room. Thank you.
Jim, I'm going to ask you to follow that, not by talking about your mental health maybe for a minute, but maybe by, just since we are in the Irish Film Institute, to just ask you a little bit about the background of this film. Zahra Mufid is the director. She can't be with us here tonight, but where she came in with you in this film, where this film fits into, I mean, you talk in the film about needing to make a big movie about the homeless, and instead, in a sense, you've been involved in making maybe what we might call a small movie about people fighting against homelessness, a movie about activism rather than a movie about homelessness. But where does this film come from, and where does it fit into your larger vision about how you tell these sort of stories?
God, that's a tough one. I mean, I just, like literally what it says in the movie, I was just like trying to record in case anything went wrong, you know? So like it was to me it was like a legal document. I'm slightly different to some of the people on the panel, you know, and that I actually think deep down, we have very deep problems. One is in the legal system, there's no question. Most people don't get to encounter it. You know, when you get to encounter it, all it does is fuck you up. That's what I believe. They immediately put the onus on Brendan and Glenn, and, you know, and that made, you know, it's an impossible situation. We weren't dealing with homelessness, we were dealing with drug addiction, I would say. I would say that if we had to be lucky enough to deal with the homelessness, we could have taken it much further. But the people that are actually homeless are too gentle, self-effacing, a mother with 3 kids in a car. They're not coming to Apollo House, you know. We were getting the fucking Looney Tunes, you know. And yes, the Looney Tunes are there for very various reasons, you know. But we are a rich enough, well enough off society in Western Europe that we could have a much better grasp of things. And I think what we felt was, what I feel, for me it was simple. I was going back to the north side. You know, like Glen, all these. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going back to the fucking north side, you know. And I think that we have we could have a way of politicizing things. Apollo House was very powerful politically. And we got caught on a, you know, we probably should have been defending the right of a person to a house as a civil rights issue, which we kind of got trapped out of. We probably should have thrown out most of the people who were drug addicted and found them places elsewhere, because we couldn't actually fucking deal with that. But we should just pick one homeless person and said, we got one in Apollo House and we're going to defend them to the death. You know, so it should have been an issue. But we were naive and wild and, you know, like, but, you know, Ray Darcy, I don't know if you heard that, Brendan, was saying to me, were you naive? Do you think you can take over any public building? I was like what? Like a police station? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you serious that we shouldn't take over police stations? Because I don't think that, you know, we have never really got the grasp. We haven't had a Martin Luther King go up and knock the fucking thing on the door and say, this is what we believe, you know? And it was a little grasp, but I was very proud of the friends I made. That's basically what I feel.
There's I was reminded of Martin Luther King in Selma, which I thought was a great underrated film about activism and about the struggle of being an activist and the real politics there. And I guess I maybe want to ask the political veterans on the panel a bit about the kind of the balance between a portrayal of compassion and of kind of helping the homeless on the one hand, and then the very kind of deep structural politics that are at play here. I think, again, Dave Gibney captures it a bit in the film, talking about a government that deliberately has reinflated property prices because they regarded negative equity as a more important political issue than they regarded homelessness. You know, and Dean talks in the film about the market. And
but just stop there for a sec. Once they accepted the European imposition of the debt on the society, they couldn't do fucking anything else. They're just in the church praying that the property prices go up so there's no negative equity. Don't get it wrong. They didn't give a fuck. Most people in Ireland don't give a fuck. Everybody's praying to get out of negative equity. So we already got in that trap.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Brendan, I think you want to have a crack at that.
Yeah, I think we can overcomplicate this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the points Jim makes about the courts are absolutely correct, in the sense that if anybody remembers the High Court judgment on the 11th of January, the judge actually says in his judgment, notwithstanding the fact that what's happening in Apollo House is a noble deed, that it's a trespass, and where trespass comes against the property rights of somebody else or another entity, those property rights need to be protected. So the judge was very honest. The judge was saying in a High Court judgment after Christmas and the New Year, when all the emotion was gone and when the media, including the national broadcaster, had given us all a good kicking, the judge felt safe enough to speak the truth and to say in his judgment, property rights trump your fucking humanity. Get out. That's what he said. And really, this is not very complicated. Almost half of the people elected to our Oireachtas are landlords. Who are they serving? I'm not saying we need to have a revolution, though if there's one going, sign me up. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, we need to wait for the overthrow of world capitalism. I'm not saying that, Harry. But what I am saying is we need a small adjustment, just a small adjustment, where we have public housing. And even now, if you listen carefully to the debate that's going on, even politicians who are concerned about the crisis can't get their language right. To talk about social housing, we don't need social housing paid for by paid and built and profiting private developers, funded by us, the taxpayer. We need public housing. And we don't have a homeless crisis. We have a housing emergency. We need to call it an emergency. And I believe that even those who are lucky enough to own their own home, everybody has someone, be it a son, a daughter, a grandchild, a friend, who can't and will never, unless things are adjusted just a small bit, be independent in terms of their housing. And we had a strong coalition here. And the elements are there. I don't think the people who come up from Galway on trains with duvets have suddenly gone away and thought everything's okay now. What's happened is we are no longer collectively calling those people, wherever we need to call them, out onto the streets, because it's mass mobilisation on the streets, peaceful mobilisation, I must say that. It's mass mobilisation, peaceful mobilisation on the streets that forces governments to do things that they don't otherwise want to do. We've seen that with the water charges campaign, tens of thousands over and over again. 11 times it took. 11 times, tens of thousands. Why can we not do that on housing? We can't do that on housing so far, because the trauma of all this and all that. We didn't fall out with each other, but we kind of got a bit exhausted and we kind of splintered. We need to get our shit together again, and we need to call those people together again. We need to get our language right. We need to build that pressure from the ground up.
Yeah.
Ashley, do you want to?
I totally agree with the public housing. There is the public housing campaign. I forgot to mention that as well earlier on. But I think for the policy end of things, like what Dave says, there's too many political parties with their own policies, with their own mandate, and it's who they vote for. Someone from Coolock's not going to vote for Fine Gael, so Fine Gael's not going to have a public housing policy. Do you know that kind of way? So I think we need to educate people as well on how it actually works, how policies are implemented, and who comes up with these policies, because they're not made by people that are affected. They're made by those that are hired in, good researchers, good little couple of bob to pay them. Do you know what I mean? It's not actually coming from the voices from down below. How our services shaped. Do you know what I mean? The services after Apollo House did not really shape into the way that the grassroots wanted them to shape to. And we can say that there is one charity out there, it's Inner City Helping the Homeless, that's shaping every single day around the needs of those most affected. And that's what we really need in the kind of service provider structure now, is the way that the services can actually blend around what we need more so than what the funding can provide. Can the funding provide an accountant? Can the funding provide stupid little things like that instead of from the grassroots up? I think that we need a people's housing policy. I think that needs to come through like the Uplift campaign that's after starting. There's an online campaign, we can all get involved in that, we can all send the letters and we can really push for that. But for me, I really feel that has to be a people's policy more so than a political policy, because so many people are just attached from politics. They've been let down by politics. There's no really good political party that you can follow and support, to be honest, you know what I mean? So I just feel that if everyone kind of came together with good researchers, like the amount of people that we've come across in the 4 years of working on the ground, we can get them all really to sit down and say, right, this is the policy that the people want, to allow people to be involved in it, and we can grow it. That's how you grow grassroots up. You build it up from the bottom.
Can I ask Nellie a question that I think is related to that, and it's where in the grassroots the artists come in. I mean, you came in through the artists union that was involved in this. There was a poignant moment in the film where Terry McMahon, a filmmaker, was talking about there's a concert going on, and while the concert is going on, the authorities are taking people out of their tents along the Royal and Grand Canals. And that kind of captured this a certain disillusionment about what it is that artists can contribute to campaigns like this. What do you think that is still there for artists to bring?
I think artists bring a completely different perspective. I think artists move in all different circles, so they can bring a lot of people together, you know. But I want to say something that I don't think the majority of people in Ireland don't give a shit. And I think the Apollo House really showed that most people care about this, and the majority of people in this country are affected by this, whether it's someone going to live with their mother, having to, 40-year-olds going back to live with their parents. Everyone is affected by this homelessness, and that's what Apollo House showed us, that people are ready to mobilise and to do a direct action. So I think we do really care in this country. We're anaesthetised to it at the moment because everything's becoming normalised. It's normal to see a blue sleeping bag on the side of the road now. It's normal to see women walking late at night with their kids. It's normalised for us now, and we need to be careful of that. But I do think we really, really care in this country, and we need to come together and do something. And seeing this film has really, it made me raging again, which is good.
Up the rats! Not up the rats. I think I get a bit of what Jim's saying. Nobody gives a fuck, nobody cares. But I think what it is about leadership. Our leadership in this country, we look at the politicians and they're just a load of shams. Basically, I think we all kind of suss that out. They're in for 4 years. Civil servants do all the real graft and make all the real decisions. And it's just a bleeding fanfare and cakes and bleeding shite. So leadership, that's what I try to do. I try to lead. I called Ashlyn and Kerry and Quentin together in a room that Brendan gave us, and I brought Brendan in and Dave in and some artists, and there was bleeding code lines and all types of mad jokes hanging around, and I tried to lead. And it was the first huge life-changing project that I tried to lead. When I was part of the Occupy movement, do you remember what that was? Just when the banks fucked us all up, yeah? About 40 of us lived down at the central bank for about 6 months and then chained ourselves to the Department of Finance. That's 40 people in the whole country. So I get what Jim says when people don't give a fuck, because we didn't know at the time. And that where we are now, middle class people, 40 years of age, living at home with mammy and not having a screen in their pocket, that's the reality. That's a kick on from that. Okay? And you read in the newspaper now, David Kitt is leaving the country, and this middle class person, fucking deadly, because now we can all work together. It's not just a working class thing, it's an Irish value thing. It's a person value thing. What value do we have? Is the value in money terms, or is it in our society and our families and what comes from that? I've been travelling to London to meet different people, to Liverpool to meet a guy who took a building that's a blueprint of Apollo House, who was handed stuff from their course saying, if somebody dies here, you're going to be done for corporate manslaughter. I've travelled to Edinburgh with Anthony from Inner City Helping Homeless and Cathal and James from giveback.ie, throwing ideas around and meeting people and building allies and strategizing on this for the last 12 months. That's kind of what I've been doing in the background. It took me a year and a half up to Apollo House to think, and now I've taken about a year to think about what the next step is. That's what I've been doing. I will ask you what you've been doing and maybe what we can all do together as a country.
I just want to ask one more question, and maybe we try to deal with it quickly. But I was reminded of the film when Brendan looks out the window and says there's the Department of Justice Refugee and Integration Agency at Burkey there just across the way. Part of the response, I think, undoubtedly to Home Sweet Home, Apollo House, online certainly was, here's some people who are looking after our own for a change. In other words, there was a kind of a racist element to some of the positive response to Apollo House. Obviously not the responsibility of any of the people that are on this stage, but where do you think that fits into how we move forward in a way that doesn't nationalize the issue and just say, I mean, I think somebody in the film, not any of you, uses the expression looking after our fellow citizens.
Okay.
But there's more than our fellow citizens that
Absolutely.
need looking after. Nelly, do you want to?
Well, we have so many people in direct provision here, and it's a shame, such a shame in this country. we've, like, people give out about Trump and what's happening on the borders of Mexico, but what's happening in this country, only last weekend a trans woman who was put into a male ward or male wing of a direct provision centre in Galway committed suicide. We're appalling here, so yeah, we have to look after everyone, and I think direct provision and homelessness should be part of the same conversation. I really do. Emergency accommodation and direct provision, absolutely.
Well, when you look at the similarities between direct provision and emergency accommodation,
Yeah.
it's the exact same. Everyone's being treated the same, horribly. But the worst is when you're in direct provision, people believe, oh, they're coming in, they're getting the welfare, they're getting free house, they're getting this. They're not, they're trapped. They're trapped in a system that they can't escape from with no money, like 20 quid a week. How are you meant to survive on that? You can't work. So you have to look at kind of like housing as a human right. If we have that enshrined in our constitution, we can change in a hell of a lot of different things. We've only got shelter, and that's all that they provide, and that's all they'll ever give us until that is absolutely changed and enshrined in the constitution.
Okay.
And should be for all.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the time, like, it's like, you know, the 1916 occupation, you know, had poets and people with vision and an alternative structure. I think what we were talking about was a kind of vision, you know what I mean? It's a simple thing to look after people. That's what's lacking. It seems that everything is ad lib in Ireland. There's no, you know, somebody gets into power, they don't make a plan, you know? There's no fucking planning, like on many levels, you know? So there doesn't seem to be much of a plan for, I don't know, I just feel personally divorced from a lot of the arts in Ireland. Am I alone in that? I don't know. I mean, like you were talking about from the ground up, it seemed to me that when the project was there or something in the early days, it was people with a passion to do something.
Yeah.
And as soon as you seem to put money into it in Ireland, you seem to take the balls out of it, you know? And I know all the time we were talking on helping Focus and helping the others and this, but maybe at some point, like, could it be as simple as that, what we were doing, which was offering a vision or a hope or an identity, was more important to the people than a bed? Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't the fucking beds. Loads of them will sleep on the street. It's just they don't feel part of the society, feel driven out.
I think we're going to go out to the floor now. So
Sorry, just
sorry.
while I have it in my head, sorry, I'm really sorry. Honestly, I eat, fucking sleep and drink this stuff, and I'm sure Aisling does as well. So I have a lot of it shit on my head. I'm really interested in a conversation that I'm having with Anthony from Innisity Helping Homeless and GiveBack.ie in terms of making a really concrete, legal housing cooperative where we raise shitloads of money, like I'm talking 200, 300 million quid potentially, and build cooperative houses, build public houses. That's what I'm interested in doing. So I just wanted to get that out of my bleeding brain before I lost
Okay.
it.
All right. So I see two people with questions here. Maybe I'll take both of them, and obviously if you can keep it as brief as possible, that'd be great. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, my question, I was a volunteer for a few weeks, and my question was, you said, I think you may have answered it, you said the solution is in the room. So could we hear more about that? Maybe you said that at the beginning.
Yeah.
The solution is here. And is that what you're just after saying?
That's just what I just said there, that last bit.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing in Ireland, rumour mills start, so I'm reluctant to say any more than that. But I'm telling you now, from the people that I've invited here, the solution is in this building. It's a bit of grassroots, it's a bit of union, it's a bit of artists, it's a bit of fucking capitalism as well. It's a bit of smarts, it's a bit of legal barrister stuff, it's a bit of going to the European Court of Human Rights, it's a bit of all that, but the solution is guaranteed in this room.
Fair.
Okay. Yeah.
Keep us posted.
Just to congratulate everyone, absolutely brilliant. I know Donna and Rosie Leonard, a few people in the film. My question to you is that why did you decide to go to a building like Nama building and not to a factory? Like, for example, in Argentina, the workers, they occupy the old factories. I mean, I lived in Sao Paulo as well, and the whole issue of why do you decide this type of Nama buildings, and why, you could have gone somewhere else, I don't know. And my question to you as well, why do you don't want to set up other maybe something like the Irish Social Forum we had in the past. My question to you is, how can we leave this room tonight and see where we're going to move from here? Because it's very nice to be discussing this here for an hour and then we all go home. Maybe we can have another meeting another day.
Do you mind? I want to take another question from the floor too, and then maybe we'll come back with a couple of questions.
Well done, really, really well.
There's another one just here, yeah. The microphone's coming from your left.
These are all very well behaved.
Yeah, the thing that concerns me most of all is that when you had the action that time when you left the Apollo House, that the way the contract that was done and the way you had to go to the hotel, I think that's where the major mistake was made, where if you hadn't have gone to the hotel, like the Maldron, and maybe got down on Con Street, got the people out in the streets, made them lie down in the streets there, I think that would have got more attention, because then you would have had buses going by, all people in their everyday lives would have seen it more, rather than they would have been hid in a hotel, if you understand what I mean. I think that would have brought more focus to the situation at that point. I think that's where a mistake was made. So if we did more of that kind of civil protest out in the streets, I think that would get more attention rather than being hoodwinked by the courts.
Okay, those are two kind of related why questions. Why, a Nala building rather than another kind of a building, another kind of an occupation, and then why the kind of sneaking around to the Maldron in the aftermath, which I think is really a very striking sequence at the end of this film, and a quite uncomfortable one, actually. The idea that this constitutes a kind of an invasion into a more bourgeois space.
Totally true, but I suppose deep down we were feeling the responsibility for the people. You get to know people; they don't become numbers, and it's just like Jesus. We have to find. Well, Glenn was thinking we have to find somewhere for them. I don't think it shows a bad heart. It's kindness and a warmth, and there was no way. Once we left, the war was over. We don't forget, we didn't come out like 1916 with white fucking flags, okay? Thank you.
I think the question about why that particular building or why an Arma building is crucially important, because there's been a lot of mischief made around that very issue. I'm not saying your question is making mischief, I'm delighted to clarify why that building. This emergency has its roots in 35 years of failed housing policies, but particularly in the financial crash of 2008, where everything reached its tipping point, and where we became responsible for 64 billion euro of private debt, and where all we got back were a series of empty buildings and land that the people who had those debts could no longer look after. And we chose a NAMA building, firstly, because we believed then, and we still believe now, that we own those assets. We, the citizens of Ireland, own those assets. How can we own the debt, but we don't own the assets? So we chose it for that legal reason, and also because there was a legal instrument, and still is a legal instrument, in the NAMA Act, where the Minister for Finance has the right to choose to change the use of any of those assets as he or she, there was a he then and it's still a he now, sees fit. And we wanted, and we spoke to Simon Coveney about this, we wanted Apollo House to be taken ours by the government, by the McVerrys, and kept as a mid-term measure until the promised housing that still hasn't materialised came on stream. If they were true, if Simon Coveney was telling us the truth, and all those families were in the hotels were going to have somewhere else to go in 6 months, we asked, why can you not use your building, our building, because the NAMA Act allows you to keep this open, and if you don't trust us, and fair enough, allow the professionals in, we'll walk away, McVerry can come in here in the morning, and with you, can continue to look after these people until you can get other people out of hotels. We asked that question. We got a load of lies in return. You know, that question, we couldn't have asked that question about Jim Sheridan's house, much as Mannix Flynn would have liked us to ask that question about Jim Sheridan's house. Or we couldn't ask that question about some union building, much as John Kilrain of RTE would have liked us to ask that question about some union building. It's very clear, everything we said then and everything we've said since. It's very clear why we chose a NAMA building, and it'll continue to become clear as things continue to unfold. And I think in terms of the question has just hit on the answer to Harry's previous question about, this gentleman's question about, the Maldron piece. We were worried for the people in there. Now look, I don't want to say too much because, everybody I think was doing their best. But the last night in Apollo House, I think it was the 11th of January, there were significantly different people in there than were in it a month earlier. The volunteers. We never wanted the most vulnerable citizens in this country to be a weapon in some battle with the police or with the state or even with the courts. We were prepared to be a weapon ourselves, but we didn't want the most vulnerable people. And we were kind of caught. We were driving down from a meeting in Fermanagh, don't ask why Fermanagh, but anyway it was, when that judgment was made, and Glenn was on one phone and I was on a different phone, and we were all ringing each other and trying to get hotels. And Glenn, I have to take my hat off to the man, in particular, we just wanted the people looked after. And yeah, we could have went out. The answer to Glenn's question, why didn't we just go out and say, here, have them now, and I don't mean them in any disparaging way, but have them now, and politically that would have been the right thing to do. It would have been a complete breach of faith and trust with the people who had been in there. So we did our best. There wasn't mentioned in the film, we got a house out in the north of Dublin somewhere, where people were put up, and 6 or 7 people were put up there for over a month. And we were just doing our best. And did we make mistakes? The best thing you said, my friend, is we made a mistake on the 11th of January. I can tell you we made a hell of a lot of mistakes long before then.
Sunita, how are we doing? Can we take a couple more questions, do you think?
Dan.
It's about 23 past 8.
Maybe 2 questions?
Okay, yeah.
Short answers, please?
Yeah, I'm going to go right to the back on the aisle.
Let's do 4 questions.
Yeah.
Not feeling the pressure now, so, I'm not very political, I don't know a lot about politics and stuff and how things run, but we've changed the referendum twice in the last couple of years. The Constitution states shelter.
Yeah.
Should we not, I guess what you guys are doing, a lot of grassroots stuff, and I totally admire absolutely anything that can be done to help another person, everything you guys have done so far. But should we not be looking at that level to change the Constitution so that if we do get something that can change the lives of all the thousands of people that are in hotels or on the streets, that this won't happen again. It can't come back on us ever again. We should be, we're Irish, proud people.
Yeah, 100%. It's one part of it. Sorry to cut you off, but we are put with time. It's one part of it, and there's loads of precedents. Ryan versus the Attorney General and Article 21 and all these types of stuff. As a country, we need the best of the best to step forward. So this is a call out to the best of the best in all those fields. Barristers, legal, blah, 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 blah. Step forward, please, and we'll have you.
Justin, down here, I think, maybe to get the last question.
How are you, Justin?
Good to see you all. Just on touching off Dean's point when he says the problem is in this room, right? That concept alone was made evident through a remark made by Jim. Jim, I feel we know each other on a personal level at this stage, and I have great respect for you, just as I do for everyone on the panel. However, I really have to oppose on what you said in regards to we got the crazies. I feel we got great people that were just stuck in a crazy situation.
We did also get some crazies, as Brendan was alluding to. We did get people who weren't homeless, who weren't volunteers. I'm fucking radical, I'm not crazy. We did get people who were planted in, who were assets of the state. We got all types of mad fuckers in there. I had the Church of Scientology come up to me. We did get crazies, but we also had vulnerable people.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is we didn't get the general families and whatever, you know.
You couldn't have had kids in there, like you just couldn't. I think the roles were mixed up too much. There's no way Jim should have been on the phone doing certain things, or you know what I mean. There's people that do that as a living, like Aisling, like Anthony. You know, they're the people that are on the front line every day, experts at it.
No, but here's the thing I felt, and this could be, you might just give out to me again. I thought the fucking hotel manager in the Maldron was the Irish fucking Minister for Housing. He had a much better sus than anybody. He was like, fuck him, he's out, he hit his wife. Fuck him, he's shooting up, he's out. And I'm with that, fuck them, they're out. You know what I mean? You have to also take responsibility for correct behaviour. You know what I mean? And we were overprotective of the homeless rather than the other way around. You know, it became a situation where we couldn't move because we had to. But I think that the system made a mistake. And I think the press made a little mistake. I think the media in general made a big mistake. The people who occupied Apollo House were the best of the generations of Irish people. And to not get them back on board and to fucking push them aside was a big fucking mistake. I'm telling you, it'll come back to haunt them. That I believe.
One last question, comment from Anthony at the back there, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
And then you shout your question up at the end before they kick us out. Just wait.
Can I just say well done to everybody that's up there on the panel. Most of you I've met after the occupation individually or on a session, Brendan, one or the other. I understand why you were in there and how things were crazy and what was going on, and we discussed all this later on, but this was 2 years ago. Tonight while we've been sitting here, the people behind me were probably saying I'm an ignorant fucker, I was on my phone. I was dealing with three kids and a mother that had been told by Dunleary Rathdown County Council tonight that they weren't being accommodated, and our organisation are accommodating them. Since Apollo House, the crisis has worsened, and my first question will be, well, what do we do now, or how do we react to this? And I know me and Dean have been speaking about it, but the fact is the child homelessness in the last year has rose 34%. In the first 6 months of this year alone, our organisation spent over €18,000 accommodating families in hotels and B&Bs. That was more than our budget for the whole of last year, alright, because the crisis has worsened. Owen Murphy's reaction, like his predecessor, has been absolutely non-reactionary when it comes to social housing or public housing bills. You know, we're over-reliant on the private market in order to put people into accommodation. We're paid €311 million over the last year on housing assistance payments in order to accommodate these families. That's not the answer. You know, I've been very laid back in regard to a radical approach, and I know we did discuss stuff later on after Apollo House. But 2 years later, we're dealing with an upheaval or an overhaul of the people that we were dealing with while Apollo House. This whole movie has been centred around a rough sleeper. And at that time, this was the reaction, and this was what needed. This blew homelessness out of the water, particularly for me as an individual or an organisation, because for 3 years beforehand we couldn't get to the level that you guys got to and what you was doing in such a short period of time. But the highlighting of the issue that you was done was absolutely amazing. But the problem is now is not the problem that we were dealing with 2 years ago. 65% of the people that come through our doors now are families with young children. Last month, 48 families were referred to Garda stations in Dublin alone because the statutory bodies, who are the NGOs, who are being paid hundreds of millions of euros, let me tell you, to put systems in place and put hotels or B&Bs or whatever it might be, and they're not the answer, all right? 48 families last month and 47 families the month before were referred to Garda stations, to sleep in Garda stations, because that's the answer now to accommodating families when they've nowhere else to send them, alright? I believe we do need another radicalisation, we do need another Apollo House, but we need it at a different level of homelessness. And again, as Dean did say, we have been speaking and talking, but the question needs to be to this room and everybody, that's campaigning on the issue. We've loads of different organisations. Some are great, some are not so great. But the fact of the matter is, we need to bring those organisations together as one and work forward in regard to ending homelessness. And if we're going to commit to eradicating homelessness, we've all got to work together going forward. Again, as I said, well done to you guys. Absolutely amazing tonight. Fair play to you.
Anthony, I hope you don't take it as an offense if I say that wasn't a question. That was a brilliant contribution, and I know everyone here really appreciates your work. And I literally do not have time to go back to the panel with that. There are more movies to be seen in this room, but I'm sure that the panelists won't be going too far, hopefully, over the next few minutes if people want to have another word with them. And maybe one final round of applause for Jim, for Dean, for Ashton, for Mary, for Brendan. And to Sarah, the director, for free, to the editor who put it for free, and to the IFI for all the support. Well done. We can fucking do this. Let's talk, yeah?